Listen, guys, we're super excited to let you know that in the next 2 months, April and May, we're adding a third weekly podcast on Fridays as our 6-week Unified Marriage Challenge class starts up again.
Yeah, we had a great turnout last fall, and we want to invite you to join us for the Unified Marriage Challenge. The details to register are in the links below. So we'll hope to see you there. And now on to today's podcast. Welcome to Transforming Families with Randy and Leslie, the podcast where we delve into the heart of what truly matters, our families. Healthy families make healthy societies. I'm Randy.
And I'm Leslie. We're diving deep into the powerful insights of Dr. Randy's groundbreaking book, The Family Legacy: Shaping Culture from the Inside Out.
Hear inspiring stories and strategies to transform your family. We'll explore topics like communication, forgiveness, healing, parenting, marriage. We'll cover it all.
We'll have provoking conversations with experts, coaches, and real-life families who are benefiting from intentional family building.
This podcast isn't just about theories. It's about tools that you can implement today.
We all come from families, so this podcast is for you.
Join us on this incredible family journey. Subscribe now as we learn to do family as God designed.
Transforming families, one episode at a time. Remember, whoever wins the family wins the culture in the end. Let's go.
Hi there. Welcome back. Welcome to Transforming Families with Randy and Leslie. I'm Randy.
I'm Leslie.
And we are delighted today to have some family experts with us in this family forum segment around freedom from pornography and a porn-free marriage. And so we're delighted to have Chris and Angela Hough with us today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce them? We'll bring them in.
Yeah, they are from Hope Reforged. Their website's down in the descriptor, but Chris and Angela Hough have walked the challenging journey of a pornography addiction. They're passionate about the restoration of marriages that have been tested to its limits due to pornography. After restoration and healing through God's faithfulness and their community, they've walked alongside many men and women who are determined to be freed from pornography's entanglement. The Houghs have traveled the world to 4 continents, speaking about their victory and uncovering the truth about this trap that holds millions across the world. The Houghs have been married since 1994. They live in Texas, close to so many family members, parents, siblings, and 13 nieces and nephews. So welcome, Chris and Angela. We're delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We're delighted too.
I love it that you're in Dallas. You know, I'm a big Cowboy fan, so that's always, you know, it's going to be a good show. So, and we were talking, but just before we started rolling here about how Jesus is the healer of this and the hero of this story, and it's a great story. But we always start here. Tell us first just a little bit about your family.
Yeah. So Angela and I, as you said, we've been married for 30 years, and we've got 2 dogs. Both our parents are around. We're both siblings of 3. I'm the oldest, Angela's the youngest, and we have a plethora of nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews now. So
they keep coming.
That's a big job.
Yeah.
It's a lot of birthdays and Christmas presents, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's get right into it. Tell us your story. We'll start with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for most people, especially nowadays with technology, I mean, people are introduced to pornography at a pretty young age. It's just so accessible right now. And even for me, prior to internet days, I mean, there were magazines and other things that were brought to the schools. That was my introduction to it, at an early grade school. And for me, I grew up in a Christian household. So, it was always this standard of, well, that's not something that you should be involved in, and so going through high school and everything, it was, I would struggle with it from time to time, but there wasn't the access to it, that there is now. And
it wasn't convenient.
It wasn't convenient, right? You had to go to the store or whatever and buy something or sneak it out or whatever you were doing with it, or find a friend who had it. And so, but there was this understanding, or this lie that, well, once this is all just because I'm not married, right? I'm having this frustration, everything because I'm not married, and once I get married, that'll fix it, and for a year or two that kind of seemed to be the case, and then the internet happened, right? Like, we got married in 1994. And then, that was right about the time, AOL and other things started coming online. And
I think we bought our PC in 95.
Yeah.
We had our first in-home computer. Ooh, that's when it all launched.
Yeah. And then, with the easy access and the stress of a young marriage and everything, it just that whole issue just really flared up. And it got to the point where, I was getting up in the middle of the night to look at pornography. I was trying to find times to sneak away from her. I was even, like calling in sick to work, just to stay home and look at it. So it was something that really got out of control. And probably about 4 years into our marriage, I finally decided, after trying, making the pledge, well, I'm never going to do this again. And, I'm done with this. And, and then you find yourself right back there again. And so I finally came to the conclusion in my own logic that, well, it's time for us to get a divorce, because I can't get out of this and I can't keep living like this. And so one day I was upstairs and, brooding for about 4 hours, and Angela finally came up and said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I'm addicted to pornography and we got to get divorced." So what was your response to that?
Well,
That was a bad day. That was a bad day.
Yeah.
I was pretty shocked. He had done an excellent job of keeping it all under wraps. But what was interesting was, I remember standing in the room, those words coming out of his mouth, and Holy Spirit rose up in me. It was not my idea. I cannot take credit. But basically I said, no, we're not going to get a divorce. Have you tried getting help? Have you tried getting counseling? What have you done to get help? And he said, I haven't really, I've done everything that I can. I have not reached out for help. And I said, well, sorry, but we got to go through that.
Yeah. And I think as a guy, you want to be able to handle everything and fix every problem on your own, right? And especially with something like this, you don't want to have to go talk to other people about this, right? And so there's that whole thing with, well, if I can't fix it on my own, then it can't be fixed.
Yeah, we were we know a thing or two about addiction, and this one is particularly insidious because of how it destroys marriages. But that's where addiction takes you. It takes you into that place of shame, cover, hide, blame,
isolation,
shame, isolation, withdrawal. Yeah. So I want to commend you, Angela, just right out the gate here, and thank the Lord that you had his presence in that moment to, that was your decision right out. I know that's not many wives or husbands' experiences when this sort of thing is exposed.
Yeah. And I would say later, I probably regretted saying that, but I had committed to, okay, let's get help. Let's do this together. There were plenty of moments where I was just my flesh took over and said, man, this is a bad idea. But it was something that our marriage vows say, in sickness and in health. And so the Lord started taking me through a process of learning. This is not just his problem. This is an us problem.
Yeah.
So we learned a lot about just, being one. It doesn't excuse you from bailing. Now there are situations where one of the spouses just isn't willing. And if that's the case, then it's pretty much not going to work. But if both spouses are willing to try to do their best to submit to the Lord and to and commitment to each other. I mean, there's so much that can happen in the process, but one of them is are both of you interested in moving forward together? And if so, come on, let's give it everything we have.
Yeah. What a difference that makes. We do a lot of marriage coaching and marriage teaching and all that too. And this oneness thing is so central to God's design. Short of that, we really aren't experiencing marriage the way he designed it. And that's part of that mindset. If Leslie has a broken leg, we have a broken leg.
Yeah.
If she's got, a problem, or I have a problem, it's our problem.
Yeah.
And the problem's the problem. I'm not the problem. She's not the problem. The problem's the problem. And fixing it together with God is.
Yeah, that's addiction. Again, whatever the addiction is, if you had a spouse that, let's say, was hiding drinking or some other gambling, or pick your poison there, and they come to you and they say, man, I have a gambling problem. I've been squirreling away money or whatever it is, and the confession happens, and it seems more natural in that to, oh my gosh, okay, let's deal with the addiction. But pornography's a little different, because it's such a direct violation of the most sacred thing in marriage, and that place of total transparency and total intimacy. And so talk to us a little bit about that journey for you guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reality is with all these addictions that you mentioned, right? I mean, these are coping mechanisms that we've created in our lives to deal with pain. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, part of the process for anybody is to start to make new habits, because you've got these neural pathways that are established in these habits, and you've got rituals built around them and everything. But ultimately, the answer to getting free from this thing is to deal with the underlying cause, which are the pressure points and the wounds in your life. Right. And the real way you deal with those is to have them uncovered, acknowledge them, and then bring those to Christ, to the foot of his throne, and ask him to bring healing into those areas. That's really what the process is. And sometimes that's, a long, slow process of getting those things uncovered. Sometimes there's big revelations that happen, and there's a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth and stuff in the middle of that. But I mean, it's, for us, it was a process probably of several years of walking it out, and the Lord gave us grace for it, for a season, as Angela was dealing with the betrayal from her side. The Lord gave me grace to be very transparent with her. She would ask me, have you fallen today? Have you struggled with it today? Where are you at? And I'd have to tell her, I did not do well today, I looked at some porn today, and she'd have to, reopening that wound.
But what that did, he actually gave me permission to ask.
Yeah.
Which was huge. So that was a little bit of trust that was built back, that it was added back to the bank account. Right. And then whenever I would ask him and he was honest with me, it built a little bit more trust and more trust. So every time he was just totally transparent. Sometimes he would say, no, I haven't looked at pornography, and I would doubt, but he would allow me to, hey, here's my access to my computer, and then as smartphones became more and more smart, I would access his phone, with his permission. And I would start seeing, okay, yeah, he is being honest with me. Or there were times where he would lie, but then the conviction of the Lord would come on him and say, no, I need you to go back and confess to your wife that you actually lied to her. Yeah. But again, all of these things were steps toward more trust. Yeah. And I will say, when the uncovering of all this pain and you're dealing with past hurts, when all of that is happening in him, it's also happening in the spouse, the spouse who is dealing with the betrayal. There's an opportunity there for the spouse to get healing and to grow as well, because we're not, the spouse is a part, even though they're not turning to other people outside of the marriage. There are things like I went through a bout of workaholism, which is more socially acceptable, but it was an attempt to cover up some hurts that I was not dealing with. So everybody has something that the Lord would love to redeem.
Yeah. The you guys know this. The word salvation, right, is sozo in the Greek, and it means saved, healed, and delivered.
Yeah.
And I think that's real important, because I think a lot of people, this has been my experience in life in 35 years of ministry, that many people understand salvation is, while my sins are forgiven, I'm going to heaven. And it is. It's wonderful.
Mhm.
But they don't really realize that the fullness of that is, hey, it's time to heal all those things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And to deliver us even when that's necessary, And some people think, well, Christians can't be influenced by, the demonic. Well, that's not been my experience. That's not the experience that we read about in the Bible. And so having skills in discipling, right, people to understand the fullness of salvation and how is really basic 101 Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Preach the good news of the kingdom, heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out devils. Like, that's the beginning entry level mission statement,
Yeah.
And I think too, just in that note, it's that Romans 8:28 that God works all things for our good. And we, Randy, maybe it was before we started the podcast, but we all fall short.
Yeah.
And he takes the very things that the enemy of our souls tries to destroy our marriages and destroy our identity. And God turns it into something beautiful. And this is what you guys are doing. Your ministry is to help restore marriages back into a place of oneness. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah. We're going to go to a quick ad here, break. And when we come back, we're going to listen to Chris and Angela. We're going to talk about the bigger problem in the church around porn, not just their history, and some of the solutions that some of you are listening today, and based on stats, there's going to be some people that are maybe struggling in this area, or you have a spouse that's struggling. And so we want to give you some answers and some solutions as well. So we'll be right back after this.
Sometimes challenges in marriage can feel overwhelming, especially when there are areas of separation around money, parenting, or sex, leading us to, oh, well, this is as good as it's going to get.
Most pain in marriage comes from being separate. God's design for marriage is oneness. Oneness is the prize of marriage.
But what is oneness practically in our day-to-day life? And how do we get there from here?
Hi, Dr. Randy and Leslie from the Family Reformation Project. We empower couples with practical tools and support to help break the cycles of separation.
We've turned our coaching sessions for couples into the unified 6-week marriage challenge.
Through 6 experiential classes and 6 challenges over 6 weeks, you will learn how to be unified in 6 key areas. Unified in design, spirit, mind, will, emotion, and body.
It's not too late to transform your marriage forever. Join us for the unified 6-week marriage challenge. Click on the link below to register today and get unified for the price of a date.
All right, welcome back to Transforming Families. We are continuing our conversation with Chris and Angela Hough around porn-free marriage. And talk to us about the bigger problem. Like, how big of a problem is this really? Our audience is mostly believers. So in the church, in Christianity, is this really a problem?
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, and it's just continuing to increase. The program that I work with most men through nowadays is called Pure Desire, at puredesire.org. They have got an excellent program that was put together by Dr. Ted Roberts, who was an ex-Vietnam fighter pilot. And then he became a pastor, and now he's been for a long time teaching people how to get out of pornography. So in his program, which I think the video series that he put together is called the Conqueror series, and this was probably 10 years ago. I'm not great with time periods, but about 10 years ago or so when they put this together, and they talked about as much as 3/4 of men falling into some sort of form of sexual addiction. And they also talked about 40% of pastors struggling with this, so I mean, that's, like I said, that was, something like 10 years ago. So, I mean, you can only imagine it's gotten more significant since then, just because it's gotten even more accessible.
What's the percentage for women?
So it's closer to, like, at the time it was closer to like 20%, but I've heard that number has gone up as well.
Yeah, we've got some stats here.
Yeah,
I want Leslie to read because,
these are they're very staggering. 57% of pastors admit they struggle with porn. So where are the ones that are doing it that aren't admitting to it? So 57% of pastors. So they're saying now up to 72% of men and up to 30% of women in the church are struggling with some form of sex addiction. And this one really hits my heart. We just had our 13th grandchild, and children are being exposed as early as 8 years old and younger to porn. And it's just coming across their eyes, and it's affecting their brains, their biology right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So it's becoming a hardwired thing out of that sinful nature that we all have in us. So it's not even necessarily underlying. It's the entry points are so much more insidious now when it's coming in at our children at such a young age. It's sad.
Real quick, the one stat that just really hit me too, as we were reviewing them this morning, was that over 90% of youth, I think it was ages 13 to 24, over 90% of them have a favorable or neutral view of pornography even being wrong.
And this one really got me too. The stats shows that that same age group considers not recycling. What's the
recycling?
Recycling,
not recycling, more of a problem than pornography.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and we're seeing a lot of what I would call grooming going on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're seeing that's a very strong word that's being thrown around a lot in education systems and stuff. But the reality is you think about these things of these social media programs that we have, Pinterest and Facebook and other things that you don't think of as porn outlets, right? And yet the reality is they've got algorithms built into them. So you see an image of a lingerie ad or something, and then all of a sudden it starts throwing more of that content at you because you spent too long looking at that, right? And then that draws you in. And so it's insidious. I mean, it is out there. It is in places you wouldn't expect it to be. And, it's geared towards continuing to throw things that you stop and look at, more and more of that at you.
What I see pornography as basically a self-destruct mechanism. And that's the enemy's plan. But the enemy's plan is also to shroud pornography as it's not hurting anyone. Yeah. It's hurting more people than we realize. There are not just the users and the people who love those who are trapped in pornography, but it's also affecting the children, the women, the men who are all being used in that industry. So the lies have to be uncovered and have to become to the Lord wants his righteousness and his truth to come in this area. So that's what we're working toward.
Well, and let's also talk a little bit about the neurochemistry. The people who think, well, I'm not hurting anybody, this isn't affecting me. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've done brain studies, right, of people. They've done the CAT scans, where they take a brain image. And they've done it side by side with a normal brain, a guy who's addicted to cocaine and a guy who's addicted to pornography. And the pornography and the cocaine people have got the exact same brain map. There's divots and scoops out of the brain where there's overdeveloped and underdeveloped parts of the brain that happen because you're having the same dopamine response, the same pleasure center response. Now, you're not activating it chemically, you're activating it visually on yourself, right? But it's the same neurochemical reaction going on.
So we've got a few minutes left here. let's say someone's hearing this today, and the Lord's saying, "Hey, this is something that you need to take care of. You need to deal with it. This is you."
It's destructive.
What would you say to them? How do you help them?
Well, you got to realize that you can't get through this on your own, right? Your brain power, you're fighting against your own brain, right? And the impulses that are there are normal impulses that have just gotten short wired, right? And so it's not something you're going to be able to get through on your own. You've got to find a group of guys. You got to have somebody that can
Or
help you
gals.
walk through this, or gals, of peers, because part of the process is bringing this into the light, right, and exposing this. Because when it stays hidden, that's where it's the strongest, and that's where it continues to just fester. So you've got to have people that you're going to talk to about this. You're going to walk through it. They're going to be able to help you, and that's probably the biggest step in the whole process, is making that commitment to bring this out into the open and talk to people about this.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing churches come up, start putting together programs for their members and for their community. So that is one great area. Another great way to get help is by going to a counselor. And I believe it's both, and having a small group that you can be accountable to, but also having a counselor where you can spend a great deal of time just processing through the healing that's needed, the freedom that's needed. So I think it's both are equally as important. And also, if your spouse is not on board, you need to have prayer covering. So if your spouse is not coming alongside you, ask for intercessors that you might know to pray for your marriage. It's good with or without your spouse being, who couldn't use more prayer, right?
Yeah.
And I will say that is a number 2 key, is prayer. When Chris and I were going through it back in 95, no, I'm sorry, not 95, 98 was when he confessed.
Mm-hmm.
So those 98 through 2004 was my process. Prayer was a big, big part, and I feel like saved me in that whole process.
Yeah.
I was able to see Chris being transformed through the power of prayer, and the community that he was involved in, and the counselor. There's so much. We need to hit it from every angle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love how you started this, Sonia. Just said it again, that the power of confession.
Yeah.
There's a reason the Lord tells us to confess our sins one to another, and
pray for each other that you be
pray
healed.
for each other
Yeah.
that they'd be healed. It is the God's way. This is our best advice for our grands. We're doing our end of life stuff, and what's the most choice piece of advice that you have for those you're leaving behind? And ours is, just do it God's way. And he made a way to restore us, and that's what it is. It's confession. Anything kept in the dark, if you're out there listening, anything that you're doing in the dark that you have to hide, that should be your the indicator light on the dashboard of your car right there, that, hey, if you've got to hide it, you need help. So confess it to somebody. You started your story, Chris, saying that you had already come to the conclusion that, well, I can't fix this, and so I'm going to get a divorce. And just the opposite happened, right? You confessed, and that opened up the door and made a way for there to be healing. I think that's really beautiful. It's very courageous, and listeners to know, to remember that you have brothers and sisters in the body of Christ that love you and aren't there to judge you. They're there to help restore you.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to you in just a minute and give you the last word, but I want to review some of the points that you made for solutions. Number 1 was, you have to realize that you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
That is a sticky point for many of right now. I know, listen to this. It's like, well, yes, I can.
Mm-hmm.
And no, actually, it's different when you have a thing than when a thing has you.
That's a good point.
And pornography is one of those, like those other addictions. You pass a point where you have control of it, and then it has control of you.
Yeah.
And many of you are probably hearing that's wow, that is me. And so that's number one. I thought that was really important. Number two, we were talking about this morning, is healthy relationships in community. So many of those wounds that are the underlying causes you spoke about really come from broken relationships, relational wounds, hurts, family wounds, whatever.
100%.
And to be in healthy relationships of love and forgiveness and safety and goes a long way from making us feel lonely and isolated and some of those triggers. So I thought that was a real key thing that you said too. And then you mentioned a program. And so having something where somebody that's gone through this before has charted a way, and there's a way. We did some research. I think it said less than 8% of churches have a pornography recovery program of some sort. Less than 8. That's not a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you are saying, this is me, I want help, it's time, reach out to the Houghs, and we've got their information here right on the screen. And those of you who are listening, it's info@hopereforged.com. That website is hopereforged.com. info@hopereforged.com. And so reach out to them and find a program, find some support. And I think with that, unless you've got something, I'm going to throw it back to you. Last word today.
What's the last word, Angela?
Oh, fear is the number one obstacle. Imperfect love casts out fear. And so pursue the love of the Lord, number one. And really just trust him that when it comes to confessing, when it comes to reaching out to your community, that he's going to line you up with the people that you can rely on and you can be transparent with.
And I will also add to that, just because you're stuck in something that's bad does not make you a bad person, right? There's a very strong difference between guilt and shame, right? And guilt says, I've done something bad. Shame says I am someone bad. And being addicted to pornography does not make you a bad person.
Yeah. You know what? Before we close the show, would you just mind saying a quick prayer for those listeners today that might have really been touched by this message? Thank you. Go ahead.
Father, I just thank you for this time together today. And Lord, I pray that you speak to everyone who's listening to this message, Lord, who's in a dark place, Lord, who doesn't see a way out, to let them know, Lord, that you have a plan and there is hope for them, Lord, that you have come to destroy the works of the enemy and that you have come to heal the brokenhearted, Lord. And Father, I just ask that you begin to work in the people's hearts today, Lord, that you begin to show them a path and a way forward, Lord, in Jesus' name.
Yes.
Amen. I want to make sure that our friends here, Chris and Angela, they are launching their podcast. You can probably find it by the time this airs. And that is, you want to tell them how they can find your podcast?
Yeah, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, on Rumble, all the normal places. Oh, and iTunes. Yeah.
And the name of it is?
Hope Reforged.
Hope Reforged. Make sure
Love
to
it.
check that out. Anything else from you there?
All
Right. Remember this: whoever wins the family
wins
the culture in the end. We'll see you next time. That wraps up another inspiring episode of Transforming Families with Randy and Leslie. We hope that today's conversation has left you feeling empowered and equipped to take action.
Remember, transforming families begins with transforming ourselves. Let's be intentional, loving, and persevere. You're not alone. We're right here with you.
We believe Proverbs 24:3. Wise people are builders. They build families, businesses, and communities. Through intelligence and insight, their enterprises are established and endure.
Thanks for joining us today. We encourage you to stay connected with us on social media, join our email list, and learn more about our resources and classes at the Family School by visiting thefamilyreformationproject.com.
Remember to subscribe, share with your loved ones, and spread the word about transforming families. We'll see you on our next episode. And remember, whoever wins the family wins the culture in the end.